corners of the earth. Among the pictures that you've seen are tombstones. Some are from Prague. The cemetery in Prague is jammed full of tombstones within inches of each other. It's so full because it was the only limited space Jews had to bury their dead. And some are from Theresienstadt, the ghetto, the place where our people died, captured forever in our hearts. There are sites all around the world where Jews have purchased land to bury their dead. And the first to purchase land was the first wandering Jew. It was Abraham. He had to buy a plot of land to bury his wife Sarah. Tradition holds that he purchased the cave of Machpelah in Hebron. And Abraham turned to Ephron, the owner of the land, in the land that God had promised Abraham, and had to negotiate a price to purchase a burial plot. And he said the words that are on the top of the page that was in your Shabbat bulletins. He said, Ger v'toshav anochi imachem. I am a stranger and a wanderer, resident alien in your midst, implying that though you can take advantage of me, though you might be tempted to take advantage of my weakness, please deal kindly with me. How is it possible that Abraham had to negotiate as a powerless immigrant in the very land that the Torah records God is promising to the Jewish people for all eternity, from Abraham forward? And yet it seems that this ancient story established a pattern that would be our people's pattern for eternity. It was a foreshadowing of the hundreds of generations to follow. So is it coincidental that the story of the father of our people is also the story of that people? Is it prophetic? Did those storytellers know that we'd be dispersed throughout the world? Is it prescriptive? Because this story was told, is that what we fulfilled, the prophecy that we ended up living? That our insecurity would be so profound that even when we're settled in a land, we can't quite believe it's permanent? When we invoke the names of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, of Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, in the Amidah, which is our next prayer, we give them a home. The home is in us. Their wandering in some way ends with us. Each generation hopes that it's the last to wander. Each generation hopes that it is the one to live the fulfillment of the promise to Abraham and Sarah, that we will indeed dwell for all eternity in our homeland. And each generation remembers the wandering of those who came before and brings the memories, and most importantly, the meaning of those memories into our lives. So now I'm going to turn it over to you. You're going to write your own sermon. The question clearly is how our tradition and our experiences and our history speaks to us about the question of immigration reform in this country. An issue that may not be of tremendous significance to us, but is of major concern for the Latino community, citizens and those who are undocumented. As many as 11 million people are in this country without documentation. And they're more than 50% of the population of Los Angeles. So clearly, I'm trying to make a point. My point is that it has to be an issue for us. We have to be conscious of the dialogue. I'm not implying, I don't mean to imply any conclusions, but what I'm saying is that we as a Jewish community have to wrestle with the questions raised. So, in your row, with people around you, take 5 minutes to look at the passages that I've given you and ask yourselves the question that I have on top. You're a Jewish sage. What lessons would you draw from these texts, and what relationship do they have to our world today? And then ultimately, how could we reconcile the moral imperatives that we may see with our current challenges with immigrants in this country? So it's all yours. Take a few minutes. We'll get back together again in about 5. All right. Seems a strange place to talk politics in synagogue, correct? But there are certain questions which really scream at us from our tradition. And on some level, our religious tradition does place that burden upon us to weigh the perspectives carefully as we debate whatever the timely issues of the day might be. Whatever policy this country decides, my opinion is that it's the responsibility of the Jewish community to lead with compassion. That's simple. It doesn't mean open borders. It doesn't mean necessarily amnesty for all. It's not a position. It's about a value. Because our own history demands that we were... I'm thinking I'm going to have a glass of wine before we do the blessing. Excuse me. There we go. L'chaim. However, our own history demands that we recognize the humanity and human dignity of others who are wanderers. That's what it means to be a Jew, because it's our story. Now that we're no longer forced to be wanderers, we can't forget what it was to be wanderers. So, this was a teaser, because over the next several weeks, we're going to continue this discussion at immigration reform salons, held at private homes over the next few months. We'll bring in some knowledgeable presenters to guide our conversation, but mostly we'll talk to each other. We'll raise the issue and ask each other questions and reflect on perspectives and what comes out of our tradition and how we feel about the role and our place as advocates for immigrants, as those who are engaged in a dialogue about immigration reform. The first one's going to be on March 15th. You all can't come. I mean, I'd love it if you all came, but I don't think we can fit all of you in the house in Santa Monica where it's going to be. So there'll be several, and we're inviting you to sign up. And if you'd like to join us for those discussions, what we've done is we've placed clipboards outside, and you can put your name and your email address on the clipboard, and we'll invite you to one of the several salons that we'll be having so that we can have that discussion in our congregation, because it does matter to us as members of the Jewish community and as members of this great nation.